This is Africa, a continent of 54 sovereign states, 17% of the world's population, 9.6% of the global oil output, 90% of the world's platinum supply, 90% of the world's cobalt supply, half of the world's gold supply, 2/3 of the world's manganese, 35% of the world's uranium, 75% of the world's coltan, and 54 votes in the United Nations General Assembly. This is what makes Africa so attractive.
Protecting Africa's resources from exploitation by Western powers involves a multifaceted approach that addresses economic, political, and social dimensions.
This is what makes Africa so attractive and makes the continent a battleground for global powers. There are numerous fronts: investment and infrastructure, military power, diplomacy, soft power, trade, geopolitics. Every country has its own interest in Africa. In 2016, Israel began its scramble for the continent. Benjamin Netanyahu became the first Israeli prime minister to visit Africa in 50 years. What did he want? Votes in favor of Israel and against Palestine in the United Nations resolutions. Africa and Israel share similar histories, he said. Israel went on to sponsor solar, water, and agricultural technologies. In the same year, 2016, Senegal co-sponsored a UN resolution. It condemned the construction of illegal Jewish settlements in the West Bank. What did Israel do? It cancelled the Mashav drip irrigation project. And this is just one example. Here's another one. The European Union has pledged more than $54 billion in sustainable investment for Africa. What does the EU want? Access to the African market of 1.3 billion people. Brussels has negotiated free trade agreements with at least 40 African countries. But does this ensure a balanced two-way trade? It doesn't. And no country has a bigger interest in Africa than China. China is funding 1 in 5 infrastructure projects in Africa. It is building every third one. Africa has an infrastructure deficit and China has a signed checkbook. Starting 2005, China has invested at least $2 trillion in Africa. It built 6,200 kilometers of railways, including the continent's longest railway line connecting Ethiopia and Djibouti. Beijing has also built the African Union headquarters in Addis Ababa. What does China get in return? A lot. Geopolitical influence to start with. Beijing is selling its culture, its currency. In Guinea-Bissau, exit signs are written in Mandarin. China has established at least 50 Confucius institutes across 33 countries. Several African countries use Chinese currency. China also gets a strategic overseas base. In 2017, China built its first overseas base at the Horn of Africa, Djibouti to be specific. Djibouti connects the Mediterranean Sea to the Indian Ocean via the Suez Canal. The base has the capacity to accommodate 10,000 troops. China also gets a market to dump its goods. China is Africa's largest trading partner. Chinese trade has increased 40-fold in the last 2 decades. At least 10,000 Chinese firms operate in Africa. This is according to a McKinsey study. Africa has resources and China has access. Did you know that 1/3 of China's investments in Africa are in the mining sector? And finally, it gets to debt trap Africa. But here's the thing, China is not the only country investing in this continent. It's not even the biggest. The United States is Africa's largest investor. It accounts for $54 billion of FDI stock. There are 600 American companies operating in South Africa alone. And this, even after the US president called Africa this. For the longest time, Africa was nothing but a war zone for Washington. It has over 7,000 troops deployed in the continent. They're spread across some 13 African countries, including Burkina Faso, Cameroon, Central African Republic, Chad, Democratic Republic of Congo, Kenya, Libya, Mali, Mauritania, Niger, South Sudan, Somalia, and Tunisia. For the US, Africa was a continent for counter-terrorism operations. What happened then? Why is the US suddenly interested in Africa? The answer is this. For the US, Africa is now a new front to take on China, and Washington is now fighting it out for power and influence. An article on the US State Department website reads, and I quote, "Africa is the continent of the future. Thus, we need to make the most of its potential. By 2050, its population will more than double to 2.2 billion people, with over 60% under the age of 25. Where is Africa's interest in all of this? Also, what about India? What role does India play in this continent? New Delhi's ties with Africa date back to the time of Mahatma Gandhi. India was part of the Bandung Project of 1955. New Delhi supported Africa's anti-colonial struggles. It supported the liberalization movements in Ghana, Algeria, Tunisia, Morocco, Angola, Mozambique, Guinea-Bissau.
Here are some strategies that African countries can use to protect their resources. Resource ownership and management. African nations can strengthen laws and regulations governing the ownership and management of natural resources. This includes ensuring that resource extraction contracts are fair, transparent, and beneficial to the country's long-term development. Governments should also invest in building capacity for effective resource management and oversight. Diversification of the economy. Relying too heavily on the extraction and export of raw materials makes African countries vulnerable to fluctuations in global commodity price and exploitation by general actors. Therefore, diversifying the economy by investing in sectors such as manufacturing, agriculture, and technology can reduce the dependency on resource extraction and enhance economic resilience. Value addition and local processing. Instead of simply exporting raw materials, African countries can add value to their resources through local processing and manufacturing. This not only creates jobs and stimulates economic growth, but also reduces reliance on foreign companies for resource extractions and processing. Bilateral and regional partnership. African countries can leverage partnership with other countries, both within the continent and beyond, to negotiate more favorable terms for resource extractions and trade. By working together through regional blocs and trade agreements, African countries can strengthen their bargaining powers and reduce asymmetry in negotiations with Western powers. Investment in infrastructures and technology. Developing infrastructure such as roads, ports, and energy facilities can facilitate domestic resource utilization and export diversification. Moreover, investing in technology and innovation can enhance productivity in resource extractions and processing, reducing the need for external expertise and reliance on foreign companies. Legal and regulatory frameworks. Strengthening legal and regulatory frameworks to prevent corruptions, illicit financial flow, and environmental degradation is crucial for protecting Africa's resources. Enforcing laws against bribery, tax evasion, and environmental violations can deter exploitative practices by both domestic and foreign actors. Civil society engagement and transparency. Civil society organizations play a vital role in advocating for greater transparency and accountability in resource governance. African governments should engage with civil society, promote transparency in revenue management, and involve local communities in decision-making, processing related to resource extractions and development projects. Thank you for watching. Do not forget to share your thoughts in the comment box below. Until next time, cheers and have a good one.